What's up, wrestling fans? It is time for another edition of The Voice of Wrestling right here on Fight TV. I'm your host, Chris Cash, alongside Nick Paglino. Hope everybody had a very good holiday break. We took off, of course, last week due to Thanksgiving and travel issues and all kinds of stuff. I got pretty damn sick last week, so it was a great holiday for me. But I'm back better than ever, and we've got a lot to talk about in very little time. But, of course, help me welcome my special co-host, Nick Paglino. Nicky Pags over there in NYC. Nick, how was your holiday break, man?
Good. Had a good holiday break. I hope all the viewers had a safe, healthy, happy holidays. You can see I've got the tree is now up.
Yep,
for Christmas.
See, it's already
and,
very quick.
Be prepared. I point that out because it's November 27th. Be prepared to be seeing that tree until like March.
Just so I know though, did you have it up before Thanksgiving?
I did not. I just put it up. I put it up over the weekend, so after Thanksgiving, look, I live in New York City, so I don't have a lot of room here, so I have to the tree is usually not back there. It's usually in another area of the apartment, but I've got to move things around. I've got to make room for this thing. That's why it's not very big. So what I did this year was I moved my wife completely out of the apartment. So
you had to make room.
She no longer lives here, and so that saves a ton of space. Yeah. So that was able to free me up the room back here to put the tree here, because this is usually where she stands,
right?
When she's home. But I have her moved in to a completely different place. So this is great. I've got my tree, none of her stuff. And like I said, I'm lazy. It takes me a while to put things up. It takes me even longer to take them down. So you can really look forward to seeing that until maybe just like Thanksgiving of next year.
Well, and around here, so I obviously I got sick, but I also just typically about this time of year start getting in a really, really bad mood, because around here, all my family, my daughter included, they love the holidays. They love Christmas. And so well before Thanksgiving, we've got like Reba McEntire Christmas albums going. We've got tons of Christmas music all over the place, like 2 or 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. I get a little grouchy. This is about the time that, I really do a good job going all year without beating my children. But when they're humming Jingle Bell Rock and shit like that.
By Reba McEntire.
By Reba McEntire in the background well before Thanksgiving. My hands get a little loose. They get these hands. Yeah. They do. I have to whip them.
That's got to be. That makes for a rough holiday season for you. My wife has reruns of that Reba McEntire show on throughout the year. Right. So that makes the rest of my whole year. So I don't feel that bad for you.
No,
the end of November and December sucks. I have all year of watching Reba scolding her family on reruns.
I do like me some Reba though. She's good. I get sick of
great.
it. So we have a lot to obviously get into. We missed our Survivor Series breakdown. We're going to talk some Survivor Series. We're going to talk some serious issues that WWE has right now, which forced them to make some big changes. Of course, Daniel Bryan is now a heel. He's the champion, which I think a lot of people saw coming out of nowhere, and we're going to get into that a little bit. Braun Strowman, whether he's going to be back, really up in the air as far as if he's going to be back in time for TLC. So that kind of makes it for a creative nightmare, which we're seeing play out 2 weeks in a row. Raw hasn't been very good. We're going to bring back Tag In, Tag Out. We haven't done that, so an extended version of that coming up in just a little bit. But as always, prior to that, we actually have our main event segment of the week. It's the main event here on The Voice of Wrestling. It's the main event, and Nick, as I mentioned, WWE really having some issues right now creatively. They are out Roman Reigns, of course, tragically, and Braun Strowman. His future, at least his immediate future, is kind of up in the air. We don't know his current status as far as it relates to TLC. It seemed as if, Nick, the way they were going with this, the way they've been putting it over, and the reports that we had heard, he was going to be back and he's going to be cleared in time for TLC, but you said right before we came on the air, a new report maybe suggesting that because his surgery is not even taking place until this week, there's a possibility he might not be ready in time for TLC. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but also in this week's main event, we wanted to kind of break down some of the situations I think that WWE has been put in because of Roman's tragic and kind of impromptu exit from the company, Braun Strowman getting injured, and the fact that unfortunately right now it seems like WWE is just in this weird place where there's not a clear-cut front runner as far as who the top babyface is going to be, especially on Raw. SmackDown maybe not quite the same way, but we'll get into that a little bit as well. There's been some heel turns, some babyface turns, and we want to kind of break down some of that. So let's first and foremost start with on the Raw side, Nick. You know, one of the guys that they've obviously turned is Elias. You know, Bobby Lashley has now gone a full-fledged heel. We've kind of seen that one for several weeks. But Elias is now a baby face, and I think you and I were both pretty optimistic about Elias and the possibilities. And of course on Raw also Dean Ambrose, one of the other guys we really wanted to talk about, now turning full-fledged heel. So let's kind of start off with just the arcing kind of umbrella storyline that's at play here, Nick, is that the WWE needs some top baby faces, and so they're making some changes. They're seeing what sticks in a lot of ways. What do you think about the current state of kind of the baby face situation on Raw specifically because of Roman's exit and now obviously the injury to Braun?
Well, I think it's terrible, to say the least. You know, with Reigns gone, and it was, sort of debatable whether or not he was a babyface because of that big mixed reaction. Obviously, the company pushed him as a babyface,
sure,
but he got a very mixed reaction from the crowd. Braun Strowman, a big babyface, and we saw it again on Raw this week. He is really getting over again. I was hesitant to believe he would get over as strongly again as a babyface after they turned him heel. But he has, the crowd really chanting the get these hands, which honestly, I'm surprised by that one. And I don't know if you are, but I feel like the get these hands catchphrase, it's the most forced catchphrase that there is, I think, in WWE. Everybody's got their catchphrase and,
right,
it's true. And everybody, but I just, for whatever reason, it feels like with Braun Strowman, he always figures out a way to end the sentence with,
get these hands.
By the end of the night, and even sometimes if it doesn't work, you know what I mean? Like, Thanksgiving dinner this Thursday will get these hands. It's like he has to figure out how to get there, but the audience is latching on to it. I mean, they're chanting, get these hands, get these hands. They're firmly behind Braun Strowman. So sometimes it's hard to predict how the WWE universe, or at least the live crowd, is going to react to someone, but it's working with him.
Right.
But with everything else, it just seems utterly forced and really not working. Elias, I think he's the best example of this. Here's a guy that you and I were talking about months ago, just had superstar written all over him, had future champion written all over him. And that's not to say that he still doesn't have that, but this babyface routine is ridiculous. They're turning him into the same babyface that every other babyface on the roster is. Elias, what made him special is that he was just that. He was special. He was unique. He was doing something that other heels and even babyfaces weren't doing. With the whole, even if you take away the whole singing gimmick, the way he was interacting with the crowd as a heel was very different. Certainly, there were those same heel traits, bashing the audience and that thing. Every time he came out and did a song, he was usually doing some kind of a song where he was ripping the city that he was in. But now they've just sort of forced him into that box of the same babyface. It's literally like, I always get this vision of like someone backstage in WWE just dusting off a babyface costume and saying, here, wear this. and it's the same thing that every other babyface wears. And really, that same argument can be made about all of their heels too. And we'll get into that when we start discussing some of the heel turns that have taken place. But really, I think Elias, right now, of all the turns, I think he's been the biggest victim of maybe not necessarily an unnecessary turn, because they did lose a lot with Roman Reigns, and they may be in the same situation now with the next few weeks, maybe even a month and a half with Braun Strowman being on the sidelines. Maybe they did need to create a new babyface in his absence, but Elias is certainly a victim of an absolutely uncreative babyface turn. And Chris, I want to get your thoughts on this, and then sort of on top of that, I want to ask you, do you think that these turns, these big turns with Daniel Bryan over on the SmackDown side, with all the turns taking place on Raw, do you think this is, I firmly believe it's a reaction to Roman Reigns' absence. And I'm sure you would agree with that.
Yeah, of
but
course.
do you think it's a knee-jerk reaction to Roman Reigns' absence? And then of course the subject of Elias.
I think it yes, but I think it is somewhat of a necessary knee-jerk reaction. I mean, I think when you have all your eggs in one basket like they had with Roman Reigns for so long, and of course you had some role players. You had some guys next in line. You had Braun Strowman, but then of course when he goes down too, you're really left kind of scratching your heads. It's, well, shit, we really haven't done a lot. Keep in mind, Nick, you and I have complained about the mid-card storylines or lack thereof for a long time now. It's not like they put a lot of energy into the mid-card feuds and the characters. I mean, you have a few guys that have kind of been down there for a while. Speaking of Elias, that they've done a good job, but I don't even think it was so much their creativity. It was just Elias being better than what I think anybody expected him to be, taking the ball and running with it, so to speak. And I think that Elias has made a ton out of a little. Now, speaking of Elias, though, so yes, I do think it's a knee-jerk reaction, but I think it was somewhat needed because of the situation they've been put in due to some of the injuries and, of course, Roman Reigns, being kind of front and center there as far as tragedies that forced their hands a little bit. Elias, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, and here's why. I think when you consider Elias as a heel prior to this official turn, he was already getting pretty popular reactions. I mean, he was getting the opposite effect of what Roman Reigns was. They're pushing him as a babyface. Roman Reigns is getting booed out of the building. Elias had to force, he had to force feed the reaction in a sense. He had to kind of force the hand a little bit to get the fans to boo him. And at times it worked really well, obviously with him and Kevin Owens in the middle of the ring, and he made, I forgot, who was that, Nick? Do you remember the city that they just went on and on and on forever? I mean, booing.
I think that was in Montreal.
Okay, was it? Okay.
When it was Elias and Kevin Owens getting booed for 15 minutes.
15 minutes. But
yeah.
Sometimes you get that a lot of times. I mean, fans would boo him because they knew, all right, this is what I'm supposed to do. But they did it out of love almost. I mean, people loved Elias. And I feel like here's a guy. The issue isn't the fact that they turned him babyface. I mean, now that he's kind of this cookie cutter, he's got to come out and say certain things. I feel like it wasn't necessary. I don't think necessary was the right word. Here's the problem I think with Elias. If they immediately knew, Roman's out, especially with Braun, once he went down to injury, even if it is kind of short term, and they said, you know what, we're going to take this opportunity the next month and a half, 2 months, whatever we want it to be. We're going to turn Elias officially babyface, and we're going to push him. We're going to put him over like $1 million. We're going to give him the main event. We're going to give him the main event programs to work in. We're going to ride this wave as much as we can and see how red hot he's going to get, and then kind of address it from there. I would be all for it. The problem is they turn him babyface, and now who is he really working with? I mean, like he's still in kind of the same spot. It's like they want him to be a babyface, but they want him to keep doing the same thing. And worst of all, they're not giving him any actual meaningful wins. I mean, this week he ends up losing, which we can get into also, the Baron Corbin, Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre thing, which I think for 2 out of those 3, there's nothing wrong with it. But for someone like Drew McIntyre, it's really a big step back. You kind of get out of Dolph Ziggler and then the little tie-up with Braun Strowman that he had going for a while, and you just immediately put him back as kind of some sort of sidekick to Baron Corbin. Makes no sense to me. But regardless, now Elias is kind of working this pseudo feud with a Bobby Lashley of all people, who's not been over for a long time. It's like a lateral move to me, and that's the biggest issue that I've got with Elias. Not so much, Nick, that I feel like he's not a good babyface and that it's not working for him, but more that there's no purpose to it. It's like, let's turn him because he's got such an organic reaction going, and because he's over so much. And let's just laterally put him over as a babyface now, keep him doing the same bits on top of the stage, making some of the same jokes, and then even ultimately losing those matches because they don't feel like he needs those wins. It's like, let's push him, but let's not push him any further than where he already was. And that's my biggest concern and my biggest gripe with Elias. Not that I don't think that he's working or fitting as a babyface, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I think he's over with the fans, obviously. I think my bigger problem is that they've stripped him of a lot of what made him unique as a heel, because he wasn't that cookie cutter heel.
That's true.
But now he's more or less that cookie cutter babyface. But, in WWE's defense, and I will say this, at least as far as last week was concerned, and then this week, I think the company was, on the one hand, I say in defense of WWE, but then on the other hand, I think to myself, I don't understand why they announced Braun Strowman versus Baron Corbin if there was the doubt that Braun Strowman could compete at the match.
Right.
So the idea was, for fans who aren't aware, just to sort of give you the timeline on all of this, WWE knew prior to Raw last week that Braun Strowman, of course, had to actually undergo elbow surgery. But they thought that he was going to be medically cleared to return in time for the TLC pay-per-view. So they went ahead and they announced that match. Well, now reports are indicating that, we know that Braun Strowman is in Birmingham, Alabama this week. That is very much true, even though they of course, incorporated that into the storyline on Raw this week. He is down in Birmingham. He is getting surgery this week. It could be as soon as right now as we record this show. And if something goes wrong, and if they find that there's more extensive damage or the surgery is, a bit more complicated than they thought, then Braun Strowman could miss the pay-per-view. So when I say in defense of WWE, because they don't know what to do with Braun Strowman right now, what they could be setting up is clearly some kind of heel trio in Baron Corbin, Bobby Lashley, and Drew McIntyre, and maybe the match, the backup plan B match for the main event or for one of the main events at TLC could be that trio against the babyface team of, let's say, Elias, Finn Balor, and maybe another babyface that these guys have been attacking. Certainly can't be Seth Rollins at this point because he's going to be facing Dean Ambrose for the title. But there could be a 6-man match that's being set up as a backup plan. So yes, Braun Strowman being injured and requiring surgery is definitely throwing a wrench into WWE's plans. But my question is, why would you announce that title match then? Why don't you wait and see how the surgery goes? And if we know, okay, it was a complete success, the doctor says he should be good to go for TLC, then you announce that match. You still have 2 weeks before TLC. So you could announce on Raw next week, that's your match. You still have what appears to be a pretty stacked card as far as I'm concerned at TLC, with Daniel Bryan facing AJ Styles in what should be an incredible match for the WWE title, Ronda Rousey facing Nia Jax in what should be a good match for the women's title, and then Seth Rollins versus Dean Ambrose. You have 3 main events right there. I don't see what the rush was to announce Braun Strowman versus Baron Corbin if you had no idea whether or not Braun Strowman, prior to somebody having surgery, doesn't make sense to me. And so as a result, we're seeing guys like Bobby Lashley and Elias who are just floundering in these new roles. And for the love of God, WWE just doesn't understand, or I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but does it appear to you that they just don't understand how to properly give wins and losses. It seems like guys are losing at the absolute worst times, and guys are winning at the worst times. You know, a Finn Balor is being destroyed when he should be built up. An Elias is being destroyed when he should be built up. And then on the other side of the coin, Bobby Lashley. I mean, I'm sorry, the almighty Bobby Lashley. Do we notice that phrase was said 50 times on Raw this week? The almighty Bobby Lashley. So now he's God, apparently. You know, and he's guy. I did like the comment about Leo Rush. Who said that comment about Leo Rush? There being an underage work permit issue with Leo Rush. That was
Elias,
funny.
I think.
I like that. But, you know, it just seems like WWE doesn't understand when to have these guys win and when to have these guys lose. And as a result, some of these babyface turns and these heel turns are feeling like they're really floundering. And I don't necessarily know if it's necessary, Chris. I feel like, you know, I know you said that it was not so much of a gut wrench. A gut wrench. That's a move. A knee-jerk reaction to Roman Reigns being gone. And I think it somewhat is. Because I think they're making, I know that it's a reaction to Roman Reigns being gone, and I know things needed to happen, but hey, you turn Braun. Braun is sort of assuming that role of the top babyface on Raw again. Of course, he's going down with an injury, which does throw a wrench into play, but you do have Brock Lesnar back, at least for a couple of more matches. I feel like they are in this frantic mode of turning guys to cover for Roman Reigns' absence. And I just don't really think it's working. And you know what? We could even get into Ambrose because I don't really think it's working with Ambrose as well.
Well, and that's interesting because I think as we kind of switch gears to Ambrose, I mean, I think a lot of people, Ambrose has been given kind of gold as it relates to a smooth transition to heel. Like, it's with the Roman thing, he gets to kind of use that and abuse it. Some people maybe even thinking that he's gone a little too far by claiming, you know, Roman deserved what he got. I mean, it's pro wrestling. Grow up, and obviously Roman doesn't have an issue with this either. In fact, I'm sure he's appreciative that he's staying involved when he's not on TV. So I don't see that being an issue. But I think that I think you and I might disagree a little bit because I kind of already know where your head's at a little bit with Dean Ambrose. And I understand your concerns, although I want you to kind of, you know, spell that out for the viewers as far as why maybe you're not on board with this yet. But, you know, we're going to talk about this a little bit later on as well, the possibility of Seth Rollins and Brock Lesnar potentially at WrestleMania. A new report coming out that might be the plans as it stands right now, which ultimately means Seth Rollins probably works with Dean Ambrose, you know, pretty close up until that point. And I think that makes sense. I mean, generally the babyface does ultimately go over at the end of the program, but I think Dean Ambrose has been protected pretty well at this point. I mean, I feel like his promo was decent this week on Raw, even if it was like the second promo in a doctor's office, which was a little weird, but I think Dean Ambrose has done a really good job so far as a heel. I think the fans are pretty invested as well, and they were definitely invested in another Seth Rollins Dolph Ziggler match. And I mean, I don't know who you give that credit to. I mean, Dolph and Seth, of course, working a great match, but also because I think people are really into Seth Rollins right now, and I think that's somewhat in part due to the fact that Dean Ambrose is a pretty worthy challenger. So I'm okay so far with Dean Ambrose as a heel. I think he's playing it well. Now, what I will say, Nick, and I think this might be a tag in, tag out subject down the road, is the Renee Young thing. I think it's, you know, after Roman Reigns, they put over very clearly, of course, the Renee Young Dean Ambrose relationship. And now it's like they have to, every time Dean Ambrose comes out with one of his wacky promos or says something or whatever the case may be, they have to cut it to Renee Young. And it's just awkward. It's like, yeah, I live with the guy, but I don't know what's going in his head. I mean, that promo scares me half to death, but I'm going to go home with him later tonight and sleep in the same bed with him. It's just awkward. I wish they would get to a point where they could be like, look, Renee, you're not allowed to talk about Dean Ambrose in any way, shape, or form.
100% what I was thinking. But it's got to be. It is the weirdest thing.
It's just awkward.
I mean, there's no better. You think about like from week to week, what are wrestlers doing when they're not on Raw? Where are they? What are they doing? And a lot of times, it'll. They have live events, you know what I mean? But they're not interacting with each other. They're not continuing the storyline.
Yeah.
This is such a great example of like, so do they sleep in different rooms?
Right.
I mean, it really.
Is she afraid to touch him?
I don't understand why they didn't just come up with, there at one point I do remember Renee Young saying something like, I don't understand what's going on with him. I don't really want to talk about it. That is the direction they should have gone in. They should have had her, they should have had a segment with Dean Ambrose doing something really, really horrible. And then, maybe that closes the show. So you don't have to hear Renee Young respond to it. Then maybe the next week on Raw, they do a thing where Renee Young gets to cut a promo saying, listen, I'm only going to address this one time, Dean Ambrose and I, this is our personal life. We would like you to respect our privacy. I don't know what's going on with Dean right now. He's made decisions that I am upset with, obviously, but because it is our personal life, I don't want to address it on the air. I have a job to do, which is to call the action on the show. I will call the action where Dean Ambrose is concerned, but I will not comment on this any further. It's just too near and dear to the heart. I wish they had done something like that just so that you didn't have to keep having her put in these positions where it's like, oh no, but listen, let's put a pin in this conversation right now, because when we get into tag in, tag out later on in the show, I want to get your thoughts, tag in, tag out, on Renee Young as a commentator on Raw so far and how she's doing. So we'll get to that a little bit later when we do tag in, tag out.
Yeah, I mean, and again, but as far as Dean Ambrose goes, I'm curious.
But getting back to Dean Ambrose, though, look, I don't want to be too hard on him. I think they're doing a passable job with him. Again, the stuff on Raw this week just made no sense to me, though. The whole getting rabies shots because he doesn't want to go to Houston. I mean, again, it's
that was funny.
It's let's just reinforce that he's a heel, so he doesn't like the city he's going to. I mean, that's just getting a little redundant. Just every heel just taking a shot at the city that they're in. I kind of feel like, on the whole, can heels come up with a new way of getting heat? Or I don't want to say ditch that completely, but unless you can come up with something that's really going to hit home when making fun of the crowd, it's just so cheap to me. It's cheap heat, just attacking the hometown crowd. I thought the segment was a little ridiculous. I really liked the stuff with him burning the Shield jacket. I thought that was awesome. I thought the writing of that segment was great. I loved when he set fire to the thing, and then afterward he said something like, I'm going to burn it down, and he stole Seth Rollins' phrase. So I thought that was really great. But, in general, I guess what's happening with me is that Raw has just been so stale and so cookie cutter since Roman Reigns left. And you've got these heels that are being 100% by the book heels, and baby faces that are so 100% by the book baby faces that maybe even Dean Ambrose is kind of rubbing me the wrong way a little bit. But that said, Seth Rollins still absolutely on fire. As far as I'm concerned, he is the top babyface in that company right now. In that company, let alone Raw, just in the entire company. I think you could argue he is the top babyface in professional wrestling today. He's that good. He's that consistent. So I anticipate this match between the two of them. I am enjoying the feud. I guess it just, I have such a bad taste in my mouth from Raw this week that even the Dean Ambrose heel turn has been somewhat of a tough pill for me to swallow.
And I think Raw has been bad 2 weeks in a row. I don't know. This week might have been worse than the week before, and that was one of the worst I've seen in a while. So I think Raw's in a pretty tough spot right now. I don't, as much as I want to give them a little bit of leeway because of the situation, it's really difficult to give them too much leeway whenever you're it's still just, it should be wrestling 101, back to basics and fundamentals. You got to build up a baby face, you got to build up a heel, and you got to have them, square off, and it really should be a little simpler than the way they make it. I mean, there's just so much garbage on there, and we won't even talk about the Bobby Roode, the tag team match, and the toilet humor and the shit that just, it really
this is what it is. It's you can sit here and say that in principle, yes, Elias could go babyface,
right.
And maybe that's the right direction to go in.
Sure.
Bobby Lashley should be a heel. Bobby Roode and Chad Gable should be a tag team. But the way they're executing
right.
is just so bad. Bayley and Sasha Banks. I mean, what was a truer statement on Raw this week than when Alexa Bliss said, she said to Sasha Banks, "Remember when you were Raw Women's Champion?
Yeah, right.
Then you hooked up with Bayley, and now you do nothing."
Friend. Yeah.
I mean, that's literally Alexa Bliss saying, "Hey, creative, are you listening to me?
Yeah.
You're doing nothing with these two girls.
Yep.
It's just these characters are all the same that I fear." I really feared it when we saw that. When I saw that inkling, that just that first sight or that first drop of Elias going babyface.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, uh-oh, here he goes. I think they may be turning him babyface. I said, I know what's going to happen. They're going to strip him of everything that makes him unique, everything that makes him special, and he's slowly or quickly going to become a cookie cutter babyface on Raw, because that's the name of the game as of late. And I think sometimes that's what WWE does when they panic because a Braun Strowman is out, because a Roman Reigns is out. But listen, man, they have got all the talent in the world on that roster, on that Raw roster, on that SmackDown roster. Losing one person, as big as that person might be, a Roman Reigns, a Braun Strowman, is not going to kill your company. These are, I firmly believe, knee-jerk, way over-the-top reactions to Roman and Braun being out. And they could very creatively be booking these other talents in a better way to, hey, build them up as bigger stars. Bobby Lashley's buried amongst this trio of goons right now, as opposed to being a top heel on Raw. Elias could quickly become intermixed in these baby faces. Finn Balor already is and has been for months. And instead, they could be pushing these guys. That next guy could step up. Look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. When Le'Veon Bell left, what did they do? Flip into a turmoil and figure out, oh my God, we don't know what to do now because Le'Veon Bell's gone? No. Other guys stepped up. They utilized other guys in the correct way, and they're winning games. So I just don't understand why WWE can't do the same thing over on Raw.
That's the main event here on The Voice of Wrestling. Let us know what you think in the comments section. And we got Tag In, Tag Out coming up here on The Voice of Wrestling. Stick around, please. Chris Cash, Nick Paglino here on The Voice of Wrestling. Nick, before we get into the returning Tag In, Tag Out, give us an update, though. We did mention a little bit about Braun Strowman stuff, but let's talk a little bit about Brock Lesnar, because I think there is some recent developments on that end as far as his UFC career and maybe upcoming match. We've debated about how long we were going to have him. Was he put in that spot as the champion once again just because of Roman? Is he just there for a couple of months, long enough for them to ultimately give it back to Braun Strowman, or give it to Braun Strowman, which a lot of people expected them to do prior to this? But either way, Nick, give us an update on Brock Lesnar, where it stands right now, because that might help us a little bit in determining kind of where WWE wants to go between now and obviously Mania this next year.
Well, right now, I think the biggest topic of discussion as it pertains to Brock Lesnar is really his UFC future. And what was once an almost guaranteed match or fight between Brock Lesnar and Daniel Cormier for the title is now something that quickly could become non-existent, depending on Daniel Cormier's future. Last week, reports surfaced that Daniel Cormier's camp is actually pushing for Daniel Cormier to retire and not to have another fight. And if that does indeed happen, that, of course, puts the entire fight between Lesnar and Cormier in jeopardy of not happening. And then if that fight doesn't happen, that could really delay Brock Lesnar's UFC return indefinitely, because there were really no other opponents that were being discussed for Brock Lesnar other than Daniel Cormier. So at this point, there have been no official announcements made regarding the Daniel Cormier versus Brock Lesnar fight. Dana White has maintained in interviews that he believes Daniel Cormier's next fight will be against Lesnar, but that match will be scrapped if Daniel Cormier decides to hang it up, and that could be a more realistic possibility than it has been in the past. So, if you rewind back to the UFC pay-per-view in which we saw Brock Lesnar hit the octagon and he had that shoving match with Daniel Cormier, what appeared to be a guaranteed confirmed fight between the two at that time now maybe is even 50-50 or maybe even 60-40 in favor of the fight not happening. So with that knowledge in mind, WWE is probably very much working under the impression that Brock Lesnar will be competing not only at the Royal Rumble in January, but he'll be competing at WrestleMania 35. So the plans for Braun Strowman prior to the surgery, and when WWE expected that he would be cleared after the surgery in time to compete against Baron Corbin at TLC, plans for Brock Lesnar were to, in fact, defend the Universal title against Braun Strowman at Royal Rumble. So if, as of now, if Braun Strowman is cleared to compete at TLC, we should expect Braun Strowman to win that match and to go on and face Brock Lesnar for the title at Royal Rumble. Now, what happens at the Royal Rumble, we don't know. It's very possible Braun Strowman could win the title at Royal Rumble. And if that happens, that could then set up Brock Lesnar versus Seth Rollins, which is a match that in the past week has been reported is something WWE is considering. Now, that's not something they've confirmed. And of course, Vince McMahon is said to be in a very sort of shaking things up process right now, which, of course, that's clear as evidenced on Raw with all of these heel turns and babyface turns and different people are in flux. We didn't even mention Nia Jax, her being the heel now and how she's doing. And that kind of plays into your argument of the silly, stupid comedy that's been going on. Right. And they're sort of applying a lot of that to Nia Jax, but they are in a state of flux right now. So Vince McMahon could, of course, change his mind several times before WrestleMania 35, but that is a match that's being discussed. So Seth Rollins, Brock Lesnar, the title might not necessarily be on the line, which would then open up Braun Strowman defending the title against someone else, presumably maybe the winner of the Royal Rumble match. But as of now, Brock Lesnar is not guaranteed to be facing Daniel Cormier in UFC, which could leave the door open to him appearing more for WWE between now and WrestleMania 35.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I guess the way that you made it sound, though, Nick, if Braun and Brock happen at Rumble, Braun takes the title, then it seems as if the Seth Rollins-Brock Lesnar match at WrestleMania won't be for a title.
No, it would be a non-title match, right. And really, the reports were indicated that the storyline going into the match would be Roman Reigns. So it would be, potentially utilizing what they've already been doing. We're already seeing Dean Ambrose utilizing the Roman Reigns illness in storyline, saying he got what he deserved. This could be another situation where you could see Paul Heyman or Brock Lesnar come out and talk about Roman Reigns, maybe take cheap shots at his illness and how he's not on TV. And then that could bring out Seth Rollins then to defend the name of Roman Reigns, his
right.
Shield brother Roman Reigns, and sort of using the Roman Reigns illness and that storyline as the basis for the singles match between Brock Lesnar and Seth Rollins.
No, it'll be interesting to see. Wanted to give you an update on Brock Lesnar. It certainly seems, that we've got to kind of watch closely to the UFC newswire and find out what we can about Daniel Cormier and if he is in fact going to retire or if he's going to actually take that fight, because that will maybe give us a little better indication of what actually happens with Brock Lesnar. And of course, as a result of that, what we can expect maybe on the wrestling side of things as well. But very excited that we're bringing it back. We've got plenty of other topics to discuss in the returning feature segment of Tag In and Tag Out right here on the Voice of Wrestling. All right, Nick, Tag In, Tag Out. You've got some topics. The way this basically works is pretty simple. Nick is going to run down some storylines, some news clippings that we've come up with, and just some different things that he'll throw out there. And of course, if we like it, we tag in. Period. If we like it, if we dislike it, if we don't like it, if we don't like the direction or whatever it's pertaining to, we will tag out. So pretty basic format and structure for this segment. So Nick, I'll kick it over to you to give us kind of our first tag in, tag out subject.
Well, we talked about it before. Let's kick it right off. Renee Young on commentary. Of course, it's been, maybe a couple months now since she was added to the Raw commentary team. Of course, the first permanent female voice on the Raw commentary team. Chris, are you tagging in or tagging out on Renee Young as that third man, so to speak, the third woman on the Raw commentating team?
As hard as this is to do, because I love Renee Young and I love her story. You and I, Nick, we got to interact with her and the crew that they had that she was working with well before she went to WWE, and they were just a podcast. They out of Toronto. Worked with who was the referee that was always
Jimmy Corderas.
Jimmy Corderas, nice guy. And then of course, what was the other guy's name?
Well, it was Arda Ocal.
Yeah, that's right.
People would know him from his time in WWE as Kyle Edwards.
Right. And haven't really talked to him in a long time, but we got to hang out with those guys a couple of times. We got to talk with them. We would guest on their show and vice versa all the time. Jimmy Corderas, one of the nicest guys in the world, and Arda, super, super nice, and so is Renee. And so it was awesome to see her make it to where she's now gotten in a very, very comfortable place with that company, and I think they love her as well. Big props for her becoming the first, kind of official female commentator on Raw, but I'm going to tag out. Not because of the Dean Ambrose stuff either. It'd be easy to kind of make that my excuse. It's just that it's just too awkward, and it just makes for some bad positions that they're putting her in. But beyond all that, I'm just not sure she's as comfortable as I think she should be in that position. And just trying to kind of, when I do focus in, and I did for the first 2 or 3 weeks, I was trying to focus in on what was she adding to the conversation. And right. I just feel like a lot of it is just kind of the useless commentary in the background, and some laughs or some oh my god type of scenarios, and that's really all she's kind of relegated to. And so for me, Nick, I'm tagging out, not that she can't do it and that she won't get better and that she won't find her zone, but just up to this point, though, I don't think she's adding enough value, and I just don't think that it's quite fitting for whatever reason.
I am going to 100% agree with you. I'm tagging out as well. And again, not because I don't like her. I think she's great. I loved her backstage presence and the other roles that she played on WWE TV prior to becoming an announcer. I thought she was phenomenal in those roles. And in fact, I thought she was the best announcing personality WWE had, period. But I'm tagging out on her as the third man. And the reason why is because, Chris, I think the problem that you're encountering when you're saying she doesn't seem to really add much to the conversation, I think the problem is because it's showing you. And I think Renee Young, a talent like her on the Raw commentary team and not really adding much, I think that is the best example of why a 3-man commentary team is just too crowded. True. There's no use for 3 announcers. If you're going to have 3 announcers, why don't you have 12 announcers? This way, no one can say anything. 2 announcers is enough. You have Michael Cole, who's calling the play-by-play action, who's sort of guiding the storylines and calling the matches, and you've got your Corey Graves or whoever is on color commentary sort of chiming in with the opinionated stuff. That's really all you need. I think when you have 3 people on the team, this is the same problem over on SmackDown, that third voice often gets relegated to simple, oh, what a move. Or, Renee's the person that'll say, like, oh, come on, Corey, because she's got to disagree with Corey. But I think it's a combination of the fact that there's just too many people there. Make it Michael Cole and Renee Young. I don't think you need 3 people. Right. So I think it's a combination of the fact that there's 3 people and just, again, I think she probably had a lot more freedom when she was doing her other roles to come up with some of the text herself and maybe improvise a little bit more as to what she was saying. And that's probably why it felt more comfortable. Whereas she's being fed crap through the headset on the Raw announce team. Right. Here's a great example. Didn't she say this week on Raw that she said, how does this make any sense that Alexa Bliss is the Raw or, the women's division general manager now when she's an active member of the women's division? She's an active wrestler. What's Baron Corbin?
Right.
He's the same thing. He's the GM, and he wrestles every week on Raw. He wrestled this week on Raw. Right. So now that's not her fault. I'm sure she's being fed that in the headset. It's like, okay, well, we got to come up with a reason why it's unfair that Alexa Bliss is, the Raw women's division general manager. And instead of allowing Renee Young to come up with something on her own, they feed her some illogic. But again, I'm tagging out on this one, Chris, just because it doesn't work. The 3-man commentary team doesn't work. And you were exactly right. I don't find myself finishing a Raw broadcast and remembering anything she really added to it. And I think that's because her voice is being drowned out by 2 other people.
Sure.
That is Renee Young on commentary. Chris, tag in, tag out on Ronda Rousey's ring gear.
Tag out. I mean, it just doesn't fit her demeanor. And I never liked the Roddy Piper get up to begin with. Right. As far as just that whole shtick as it was. But then of course, just in general, I will give her some credit on her hair though. Like they do her hair in some crazy ass, like fighters always, the women fighters, they find some creative ways to do their freaking hair.
It's badass.
It's badass.
Badass is the way to.
So I'll tag in on her hair. Okay. But I'll tag out on everything else.
Oh, I gotta agree with you, and I bring this up because the best example of it was in her match against Charlotte. I mean, here is this is, and let me just put this out there, match of the year candidate for me. And in so many ways. Yeah. Not only was it a great match, but just the brutality and the physicality and the sheer badassness of those 2 women in that ring. It just puts the match at match of the year. Ronda Rousey, once that bell rings, as far as I'm concerned, can virtually do no wrong. This woman has been amazing. Her promos have been really phenomenal in the past few weeks. Yeah. This woman is in a very brief time etching herself out to be one of the greats of all time in WWE. When people were sort of, making those early comparisons to Kurt Angle, I see it. Yeah. It's there. I mean, she is that good. And putting her up with someone like a Charlotte Flair and allowing Charlotte Flair to come out with this rage and what Ronda Rousey's body looked like at the end of that match, just beaten and her selling, and it was amazing. So in the middle of the Boston Crab, when she's in agonizing pain and it looks amazing, she reaches her hand through and she's adjusting because she's always got to yank her trunks down because they keep riding up. And I mean, she's literally like had to reach into her crotch area and like pull the shorts out, and it was so distracting. I'm like, oh man, and then she had to do it again when she was after she sold the beatdown. I think it was after one of the cane shots or something like that. Her top started moving down, and so she had to in the middle of it, and it completely sort of breaks character and takes away from what she's doing. They got to give her better ring gear. I mean, wear some cool short. Wear the stuff that the Lesnar wears. The shorts, the longer shorts or something like that, and a top that's not so. It just seems totally uncomfortable for her what she's wearing. I am tagging out on this, please, Rhonda. I agree. From neck up, she is phenomenal looking and badass looking. Let's get her some gear to complete the picture of one of the best superstars WWE has right now.
That's true.
Tag in, tag out on R-Truth. Just in general, R-Truth.
No, you've got to tag in on a guy that can recreate himself into comedy gold. Just every year, it's almost a different gimmick completely too that he can do it with. I mean, he's just a funny guy, and he looks the part too. I mean, he was taken pretty serious in TNA there for quite some time.
He was the champion.
I think maybe WWE obviously tried to take him serious for a brief period of time, but they never really saw him as a star. And every week when you see him, sometimes the best comedic actors out there to me also could have been the biggest legitimate credible stars that the company had too, because they're just so naturally comfortable on the mic, saying things, they're fluent, and literally R-Truth is just one of the most entertaining guys you will ever fine. And him and Carmella have been phenomenal together too. They're both really, really, really good. But R-Truth, tag in all day on him. I hope to goodness he never, ever, ever leaves wrestling, period. I mean, he's like Heath Slater on steroids though, and good. Right. He's good at that gimmick, and he's a guy that's meaningless in the grand scheme of things. Yep. The big picture, he has no place. But I don't want him to go anywhere. You can have him come out and act a fool every single week, but he's actually entertaining at it. R-Truth, tag in all day long and then some. 100%.
I am tagging into, and you hit the nail right on the head. For a guy who is as meaningless as he is in WWE, the fact that he gets me to genuinely laugh every time he's on screen. When he came in and started rabble rousing the Raw team at Survivor Series, saying, guys, we can't let this thing break down. And the Miz says, what are you doing here? You're not even on Raw. Doesn't know what show he's on. It's hilarious. I mean, I genuinely laughed out loud. This guy, I mean, he's even taken with Carmella something so stupid, this dance break thing, so ridiculous, so juvenile, made it hilarious. I'm tagging in on this guy. I love him. He puts a smile on my face every time I see him. And here's a guy that I wish they'd do more with. But you want to know something? If they did more with him and they pushed him more, they'd probably make him another cookie cutter baby face, and they take away everything genuine about him.
That's true.
That's so good right now and so unique. So we both tag in on him. Here's an interesting one. We've got a well-established guy that we just talked about, R-Truth, been around for years. He's a veteran in both WWE and TNA. And now we're going to turn to a newcomer who's going to either appear on Raw or SmackDown, and that is NXT standout Lars Sullivan. Chris, I know he has not made his debut yet, but this is we're going to predict here. Tag in, tag out on Lars Sullivan making the jump to the main roster.
So I'm going to kind of go a different approach with this. I'm going to tag out only because I think not because of him, not because of his potential or lack thereof, if I felt that way. I think he's got plenty of potential. I think he's unique, which is always good. But a couple of reasons why. One, WWE does not do a very good job with the transition from NXT to the main roster. They just don't. You can go down the list of people who have struggled coming over and just got lost in the shuffle from the very, very beginning. Now, a lot of them do not get the promo packages and the big hype leading up to it. That also concerns me in the fact that oftentimes when they have done this in years past, that just puts too much pressure on him. And if he doesn't succeed right away, they again, go completely the opposite direction and never really give him a true shake. The other reason that I think it's concerning for him is because of how unique he is in size and stature. He's a kind of one of the bigger guys. He's not like a muscled up Batista type or John Cena type, but and he's not like some small AJ Styles guy. I mean, he's a brute force type of, in your face guy, and it's like, he's one of those kind of in between. He's not fat, but he's not like Batista muscly. He's just a big muscled up, country boy fed type of big guy, in a sense that I feel like WWE just really never knows how to handle those guys either. He has all the potential in the world in my mind, but again, I'm not ever going to get my hopes up for big hype from a guy from NXT until WWE starts showing a little bit of a better track record with how to handle them. And so I'm tagging out for now, at no fault of his, by the way, just because I don't trust that WWE is going to make much out of this hype that they're putting into him.
Got to agree with you again, Chris. I'm tagging out as well. I think this is a situation where, again, I'm going to fold it into the knee-jerk reaction that is Roman Reigns leaving. I think this is a situation where maybe a Vince McMahon is saying, give me another big guy. I need another big guy.
Right.
Lars Sullivan has Vince McMahon written all over him. He's a giant. He can yell and scream. He can hit a big power slam. That is what Vince McMahon loves. And I feel like this might be a situation where Vince McMahon is saying, Roman's gone, Braun's out. We don't know how long. Give me another big man. And when you rush a big man to the main roster, or when you just rush a big man in general, WWE 9 times out of 10 fails on the creative side. And it becomes a situation where, you're going to see Lars. I do like the fact that they're doing the thing of who's going to get him. Is it Raw? Is it SmackDown? They're going to be jockeying for who's going to sort of draft Lars Sullivan. I like that. That kind of builds more anticipation for him coming up to the main roster. But, it could be one of those predictable situations where, he lands on Raw. He'll tear through a bunch of loser jobbers. He'll tear through the Kurt Hawkinses and the Heath Slaters and the Rhinos. And, he'll beat those guys before they put him in something maybe meaningful. And he'll just kind of be that big baby face or most likely that big monster heel that kills everybody and has no true identity.
Right.
I really wish they would have allowed him to sort of establish more of an identity in NXT, but we know Vince doesn't care about that. Whatever you were in NXT doesn't matter. You bring him up to the main roster. It's as if his time in NXT really didn't exist at all. So yeah, I'm going to give you an early tag out on this one because it's the track record of WWE and the heels, and the big guy heels, and combining that with the fact that I feel like this is just Vince McMahon scrambling for a big guy in the wake of Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns leaving. Listen, there is enough talent on that roster right now to develop and focus on and build. You have a giant heel in Bobby Lashley right now that's doing nothing. How about you build him up and don't add to the pool by just throwing another big guy into the mix?
Yep.
That is Lars Sullivan. We both tagged out on him. Maybe we can disagree at one point here. We've sort of agreed up to this point. Maybe we'll disagree on this next topic, Chris. Very interestingly, Shawn Michaels, of course, had his coming out of retirement match at WWE Crown Jewel. There were reports indicating that maybe the direction WWE was going in with Shawn Michaels was to have him have that tag match at Crown Jewel, then potentially work a singles match against The Undertaker. However, in a recent interview, HBK, when asked if he will have another match past Crown Jewel, said negative. And he went on to explain that he was testing the waters with the match at Crown Jewel, and it was good enough for him. It took a big toll on his body, and he has no plans to have another match after Crown Jewel. Chris, tag in or tag out on HBK saying he will not wrestle another match.
Well, wait, though, are we tag?
More so, I guess, tag in, tag out on do you believe him?
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Do you tag in, tag out on HBK wrestling another match?
I'm going to tag in, assuming that's what we mean. Tag in, he does wrestle again. We don't believe him. Tag out, he's not going to wrestle again. Is that
correct?
Okay. I'm tagging in on the fact that he does wrestle again because if he in any way feels good about that match, or comfortable with that being his last match, then I might lose a little respect for, his standards of himself. I think that, look, it was great to see him back in the ring, and I think he obviously looked better than the other three guys in that match. But maybe not even. Triple H can still go, but I felt like as far as the other two, out of the three guys that you're probably not expecting a lot out of, in Shawn, Taker, and Kane, I think that he looked, probably a little better than the others, and he still has what it takes to put on some good matches. But I'm going to go back to what I'd been saying the whole time. That makes no sense to me. I think it would be more difficult for him to work a style that would fit him now with his age and some of his physical limitations with guys like Triple H or Undertaker and Kane than it would be if he got in the ring with an AJ Styles, a Seth Rollins, a Dolph Ziggler, a Daniel Bryan, etc. And obviously Dolph Ziggler is just for my own personal thing in there. I would love to see those two guys. I don't think they'll ever work together, even if we get another dream match or two out of Shawn Michaels. Dolph will probably be at the very bottom of that totem pole as far as priority goes in WWE's mind. But either way, I feel like it would make more sense. I also feel like because everything was a little spoiled, Nick, beforehand, we kind of knew that Shawn Michaels was probably coming back to work a match prior to it being announced, and so maybe it fell a little more flat than it should have, being that it was Shawn Michaels, and I think they did it all wrong. I'm saddened by the fact that he waited as long as he did, and that the spotlight going into that show wasn't, when it could have been all about Shawn Michaels' return match, and I think you would have gotten more of that if it had been a singles match, a little more high profiled, a little more meaning behind it, possibly, and maybe even at a Mania. I think you would have gotten that, and I'm saddened by the fact that it went the way that it did. Because I'm saddened by it, I have to imagine that Shawn Michaels, being the perfectionist that he is, would be saddened by it as well. And I would imagine, Nick, that he has to be wanting one more do-over. WrestleMania is coming up. Maybe he's saying no just because he doesn't want a lot. I do normally take him at his word, though, so there's a very good possibility I'm wrong here. But I'm going to tag in on the idea that he is going to work one more match, or tag out on believing him, or whatever. I don't know what the hell you asked me to do, but I'm going to say Shawn Michaels will work another match again. I'm really, really hopeful. It may not be this year at Mania. Maybe he got that little, maybe the bug was kind of bit a little bit, and kind of hold him over. Maybe it's next year's Mania. I don't know. I do think we'll see a more high-profiled singles match between Shawn Michaels and someone in the next year and a half. Maybe not this Mania, but next. Hopefully this Mania, though. And yeah, I'm going against my gut probably in saying that Shawn Michaels. Maybe it's just me deep down wishing that we get one more match, because I really a lot was left to be desired with that tag match.
And you know what, Chris? We are going to disagree here. I'm going to tag out on it. I still firmly believe, and he did say in the interview that he actually brought up the opinion that he came out of retirement for the money. And he actually said no. He said that, of course, he's going to say no to that. He said that he would actually have made more money working a match at WrestleMania than doing the Crown Jewel event. That's what he says. I mean,
maybe
no way of, I don't know if that's true or not. But like you said, the match had nothing to do with HBK. It was about Triple H. It was about The Undertaker. That was the match they had at Super Showdown. Then it led to the tag match. It really wasn't about HBK or Kane, really. They were sort of so what is the reason for him coming back? Now, he said the reason why he came back is because he wanted to test it out. He wanted to see how his body would hold up. And he did say that the match took a massive toll on his body and that he was hurting afterward. And that was one of the reasons why he says he's not going to have another match. But because he broke his word the first time, he had been that one guy that has held out for so long on not coming out of retirement, has said over and over again he wasn't going to do it. Then all of a sudden, hey, look, here's Crown Jewel. Here's a pile of money. Here's a show that's being built on sort of old school talents like The Undertaker and Triple H and you know, I mean, John Cena was supposed to be there, but he of course didn't appear on the show for other reasons. He comes back, HBK comes back for that show. All of it seemed odd. I agree with you. I hated the way it was done. It was done improperly. He probably knew that. He probably knew that the spotlight could have and should have been more on him coming out of retirement for a match. I think it was all done for the money. So I believe that if an opportunity like this presents itself again, if it's a guy like an Undertaker, if it's a guy like a Triple H or a Kane or someone of his age and his work ability that he could work with and the money is right, I think he'll do it again. So I'm tagging out on him saying he's never going to have a match again. I think it will happen again at some point. And if for no other reason, then he can't be that happy with the way he went out if that was his very last match compared to the way he did go out when he wrestled Ric Flair in one of the most memorable and incredible moments in professional wrestling history.
I thought you said we were going to disagree. That's what I said.
Yeah, but you said you said you tagged out. You tagged out. I mean, I guess we don't really know what we're tagging here.
But I said that I thought he was going to wrestle another match.
All right, so that's what you're saying. Then.
Yes.
You're but you said you were going against your gut and thinking that he actually won't, though.
No, yeah, my gut tells me to take him at his word. I'm just saying that I'm still tagging. I'm going against my gut and saying that I believe he will for a lot of the same reasons you just mentioned.
Where we're disagreeing then is in the sense that, you know, I'm not taking him for his word. I really don't believe him. Right. And I don't mean that as in like he really believes this now and in 3 years something's going to happen that's going to force him back. I think he was kind of saying that in the interview, like negative. I don't want to plant any seeds for anything now. But I really think he could be tempted very easily to come back. So, no, I'm really not taking him at his word on this. So maybe that's sort of where we're disagreeing. Yeah. But maybe we do agree at the end there that that he will have another match. Let's put it to you this way. I think we can both tag in on the idea that we don't know what tag in, tag out means.
No, that's exactly on
our own segment.
Our own segment, we have no clue what we're tagging in and tagging. On that one, I had no idea. I literally think I said, I'll tag in on this and tag out on this because I had no idea what we on that particular one. I did not know. Some of them are obvious.
You did that thing where like you tagged in and then you bailed on your tag partner.
Right.
Immediately you tag back out.
Right. It's like
you turn heel in the middle of your explanation here.
It's like if you ask like who's better looking, me or you, tag in and tag out on that. It's like, am I tagging in on me being better looking than Nick, or am I tagging out on Nick being better looking than me? Because either one of those is accurate, but I don't know. But I don't know which way we're going.
I think the way the viewers would respond to that is they say, yeah, we tag in on that because that means they get to just smack us across.
No kidding. Right. Guys, that is tag in, tag out, though. We plan on bringing that back. Hopefully, we'll get to the video segment, a little intro for us as well, because we love this gimmick. We love the segment. It gives us some cool ways to run down some kind of random topics, especially that we might not otherwise get into good, serious conversation about. So let us know what you think about tag in, tag out. Glad that it's back. But that is tag in, tag out. And, of course, guys, we are very appreciative that you tuned in this week to The Voice of Wrestling. We're happy to be back. Got big plans coming up, and we hope that you'll stick around and check us out every single week, Wednesdays, 5 o'clock Eastern on Fight TV. That is Nick Paglino. I am Chris Cash. This has been The Voice of Wrestling, and we will see you next week.